So, good morning, everyone. And it is with some bittersweet emotion that I welcome you all today. It's our last proposition for this semester. And our presenter today is Dr. Sachin Dutt. He's been a core member of the proposition team, and he's a visual designer, graphic novelist, and has a master's in visual communication and a PhD from the Industrial Design Center in IIT. He's been working, of course, with the School of Design as the head of visual communication and has authored several graphic novels. And his research interests lie in storytelling and the potential of storytelling in branding, in advertising, and in education. He's presented a part of this proposition to us earlier, many years ago, and we are happy to revisit an extended version of this topic, taxonomy of the affective domain, the challenges and opportunities. So, very warm welcome, and over to you, Sachin.
Thank you, Radha. So is my presentation screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, so I will recapitulate the previous presentation, which this one is a continuation of.
Could you
And,
increase the volume, Sachin? Your volume is a bit low.
is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this is in the context of the curriculum design process, where uh, every course that happens in a classroom is aligned to different program objectives, which are further aligned to the graduate attributes of the university. So there is a process that every teacher follows so that what is being taught in the class is aligned to the the goals of the university and of the college in which under which that course is happening. And it further goes down to selection of appropriate teaching methods and even the final evaluation. So in a good curriculum, everything is well aligned and connected with each other. So that is what is expected, that things should be properly aligned with everything. So just for example, using some keywords from graduate attributes from a program, if we look at the statements uh, that form the graduate attributes, they can be divided into statements about knowledge, skill, and values. They form the three core components because uh, as far part of the education, it's not only about acquiring knowledge but also skills and values. That is the belief, the underlying belief of university education. So uh, and the learning outcomes, the defining of learning outcomes within each category is helped by, we take support from the Bloom's taxonomy, because there are certain advantages that it provides. First of all, in helping us define the move from a level of simple to more complex ideas that need to be discussed in the classroom. And more importantly, it provides uh, action verbs. And action verbs really help in understanding what would be the outcome, the learning outcomes. The They become observable. The changes that are happening in the student uh, can be verified with the help of the action verbs, whether those changes have been um, successful, or how successful the program has been in terms of when we finally evaluate the outcome of a course. Uh, but the issue and the problem which the focus is at the moment is that the taxonomy which we use for writing the program learning outcomes, is the same taxonomy which is used for the knowledge domain is used for also skill and values. But originally that the taxonomy that we use, the Bloom's taxonomy, is only meant for writing learning outcomes for the the cognitive domain, which is about the course content related to knowledge. But over the years, other kinds of taxonomies have also been developed. For example, the taxonomy of psychomotor domain has been specifically developed for addressing learning outcomes in the skill domain. Then, and the taxonomy of affective domain has been developed to address learning outcomes uh, learning outcomes aligned with values. So there are actually three different taxonomies. However, the popular practice is that only the taxonomy of the cognitive domain is used for all three of them: knowledge, skill, and values. So this is the central problem, the challenge that is being addressed. How do we resolve this issue? And this issue is actually well documented. It's not I after giving my previous presentation, I when I did a literature survey, I found out that this problem has been acknowledged by the academic the educational community. And so yeah, these are the books, different books which are available for if for writing the taxonomy of affective domain and the psychomotor domain. And these are books written subsequently after Bloom's book, the famous book which everybody uses for writing the learning outcomes, that particular triangle that we have seen, which shows the hierarchy of uh, knowledge. So there are different books for these three domains. However, only the first one is used. So we will be addressing uh, the issues that are being covered in the taxonomy of affective domain. So coming back to this issue being a common knowledge in the academic community. So this paper addresses this problem. So in the context of it is pointed out in architecture education has shifted from traditional focus on providing students with specific knowledge and skill sets or inputs to outcome based student centered educational approach. Within the outcome based model, students performance is assessed against measurable objectives that relate acquired knowledge and skills to performance expectations in higher level courses or real world architectural practice. Bloom's taxonomy has been widely accepted as a useful tool for defining learning outcomes. It references three domains that impinge on the learning process, including the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. In practice, most of the attention is paid to the cognitive domain, considering the interdisciplinary and multivalent character of architecture as discipline. Curriculum design cannot be founded primarily on cognitive based outcomes. This paper argues that affective domain, especially in the field of building learners' personalized value systems, is essential to designing outcome based architectural programs. Uh, Interactive studio based education provides a platform to integrate cognitive behavioral that are necessary for professional practice. So, since architectural education is much more well established than uh, structure, so this problem has been identified uh, in the domain, and already there is discussion on addressing what should we do once the problem has been identified. So, because when we are writing the learning outcomes, we know that we are using only Bloom's taxonomy. We are not using the taxonomy of psychomotor domain or the taxonomy of affective domain, even though our learning outcomes do include statements related to affect and skills. So if our learning statements did not have any statement about value or skill, then that would have been fine. Things would have been okay. But uh, the learning outcomes are combination of all three of them, not just the affect the knowledge and the cognitive domain. So this is the brief summary of the previous presentation that I had, where only this problem was addressed. And now, so what can we do about it? Uh, so that was my interest. My interest or my curiosity got captured by this issue, and then I started thinking about what can we do now that this is the situation. So the question that emerged from this is that how to develop learning outcomes for courses in design using taxonomy of affective domains. So it's a straightforward question, because the taxonomy is already available. It's developed by Craftwell and Bloom. Bloom is the secondary author in this book, and so it seemed quite straightforward when I started, but the challenges emerged, and a lot of them. It was really almost a terrible situation for me, thinking that whether this topic is worth pursuing because the complexities were of that extent. So, uh, continuing, so getting into now, the first step obviously would be to try to understand what the affective domain is about. What is this taxonomy? How is it different from the famous taxonomy that we are used to using, the Bloom's taxonomy? So in this one, so these are the set of levels of affect, uh, which are similar to the Bloom's levels. The triangle, which goes from more simple to more complex issues. So the first one is receiving, and so the explanation is given is more about awareness, willingness to hear, selected attention, listening. So then we have responding, active participation on the part of the learners, attends and reacts to a particular phenomenon. Learning outcomes may emphasize compliance in responding, willingness to respond, and just overall motivation. So we see the descriptions are very different from what is there in the usual Bloom taxonomy, which is trying to capture how the issues are of knowledge, but here the issues are mostly related to attitude of the student, not about how much knowledge a person has, but what is their attitude in a learning setup. So the third level is the worth or value a person attaches to a particular object, phenomena, or behavior. This ranges from simple acceptance to the more complex state of commitment. Valuing is based on internalization of a set of specified values, while clues to these values are expressed in the learner's overt behavior and are often identifiable. So here it is entering into the domain of value from this level itself. The first two levels are mostly the preparation of the person, whether how much responsive the person is. Then comes the issue of identifying what are the learner's values that are getting developed. Then the fourth level is organizes values into priorities by contrasting different values, resolving conflict between them, and creating a unique value system. Okay, so this is about decision making, making choices between, if there are two or three options, which one will a person choose? Now that depends on the value hierarchy that one has decided for oneself. So that ultimately helps in decision making about making choices. Then internalization of values has a value system that controls behavior. Now at this level, at the highest level, the whole behavior of the individual is now controlled by values. Now this in behavior psychology, the behavior is defined By other aspects also, there is stimulus response where the individual only reacts to the situations. But in this level, the behavior is defined by the values that one has become confident in for oneself. It's more of like self, uh, you can say, knowledge about oneself, not the outside world, but what is within inside the learner. So, and guiding one's life based on what one has discovered inside themselves. So, this is what is given in the taxonomy, which is already there, it's present. Uh, but the difficulties now emerge. It sounds fine when we read about it. Uh, for example, let's say the objective, which one of the values helps define, is organizes value into priorities by contrasting different values, resolving conflict between them, and creating a unique value system. And there are further descriptions of this. Recognizes the need for balance between freedom and responsible behavior, accepts responsibility for one's behavior, explains the role of systematic planning in solving problems, and these are other things. Prioritizes time effectively to meet the needs of organization, family, and self. And the action verbs are adheres, alters, arranges, combines. These are different set of action words that we have now, uh, other than the first Bloom taxonomy. These all are different action verbs. The issue is how to include these objectives in everyday classroom practice. This is not so straightforward, and probably that is the reason this has not been used. This is just my guess, uh, because if we go back to uh, the user friendliness of, this is a terminology I'm using from design. It's a solution, how user friendly it is, how easy it is for a teacher to write learning outcomes. So it's quite learnable in that sense, the first Bloom's taxonomy. For example, let's say the teacher defines the knowledge level of a certain uh, course, an assignment at the second level, which is the level of understanding. So you have to, the action verbs are available. For example, classify, the student learns to classify and categorize information. So based on that, one can decide the assignment will be related to something to do with classification schemes in a given subject matter. And overall, there are different learning and teaching methods available by which students can learn how to categorize information. And then final evaluation can be done on the basis of how well the student can categorize information from given data, and one can grade that performance from 0 to 10. So it's a quite process that everybody can learn, every teacher can learn, everybody, even if somebody has come from an industrial background, can learn this process and develop their course learning outcome and course objectives. But this is not happening in the affective domain. For, if we look at, let us say, the same objective, uh, let's say the affective level is organization, uh, and the action verb is adheres, alters, arranges, combines. What would be the assignment and how will it be evaluated? These are questions that are not clear. It would it needs different subject, altogether different subject. For example, adheres. It does that mean that certain rules are, uh, that the rules of the college the student is following as it is, but that goes outside the subject matter itself. It means, are we going to add more subjects which are particularly dealing with this taxonomy? So at this point, there was really a block, and and it seemed that uh, it would not be easy to, go ahead further with it, because of these difficulties. About, these are practical difficulties, uh, and because increasing of number of subjects is also an issue. As long as we can, uh, usually what we are currently doing is in the same course trying to identify knowledge, skill, and value component. We don't have a separate course. Then it will become like moral science, that you have a separate subject which is teaching values, and there are separate subjects which are for skills. It is okay. There can be a separate skill subject which is focusing only on skill, but for value it was little it's uh, a little challenging to have a course. So we have soft skills as a subject, but uh, we will see further ahead that the complexity of the issues of dealing with values in itself, and we will address the problems of the subject of soft skills also in that process. So, but we need to go further into trying to understand what are the uh, challenges involved in dealing with development of values and attitudes as a learning outcome. Okay, so it not repeatable and reproducible, which means that other people cannot. It's not like it's not as easy repeatable as the Bloom's taxonomy, which everybody can use, every teacher can use quite easily. So a figurative domain is not that easy to work with. So just yeah, so this is really like going into dark now, what to do with this situation. So again, questions, when we are in dark, we ask questions. Can values be learned? Are they inherent? Because this is a very basic debate. Maybe people are born with certain values. We cannot teach them. We cannot measure them. Can we really measure them? Uh, can we really find out what the values of a person are as an external viewer? So these are some questions that emerge. Again, go back to the literature on values. There's a humongous literature. It's it's in every field. There in ethics and morals. Then there are Eastern and Western point of views about it. Democratic, conservative, institutional. There is a huge. If we search for literature on values, and it's difficult to pinpoint which domain it lies in, because it's there everywhere in all domains. So that was a very tough task, almost at the point of abandoning the quest. So, but then another question emerged, that are there any scientific studies on value? So when this question was asked, there was something which was found, that when we are talking about scientific studies in the sense that they are repeatable, they are being reproduced by different researchers with similar outcomes, and then it has precedence and lineage. It has a history of development where different generations of people have worked on the same idea and developed something finally. So there is indeed one uh, theory of basic human values by Schwartz and others in behavioral science, and this really has done a lot of work developing and trying to understand from the deep history of this subject, and they finally come to certain really simple things which are measurable, and which other people can use, and they are passing this test of these three criteria. So it has limitations. It's not perfect because again there will be subjectivity in identifying, measuring the values of people. It provides a kind of a scale. It is in a nutshell, they what they have done is they have identified 9 values which are common across nations, people from different uh, communities, ethnic groups. So this is what this they have identified. The theory has identified that there are 19 core values which are common, irrespective of the religion, the nationality of a person, and uh, this has been corroborated by several researchers, not just one. and they have a huge sample size of around 200,000 people from different countries. It's a huge survey that after which they have come to this conclusion. Development, and it is still under development. The research is still going on. More and more people are trying to testify it, find its validity, and so far it is holding the ground. It has not been falsified completely. So, and to the extent that it is now used in European Social Survey, which is a survey which monitors change and continuity in a range of social variables, including social and public trust, political interest and participation, social political orientation, media use, moral, political, and social values. So all these the survey of trying to understand the people, because the policies that the government develops, if they understand the values of their people, it will help them in developing the right kind of policies which are aligned to the use of the needs of people. And this is also a practice in branding where the values of the customer or the audience is what people try to identify when they are doing marketing surveys, so that their branding campaign can be aligned with the values of people. So these kind of surveys help in identifying, simplifying. This is a simplified model which we can further simplify into core value sets. These are those large number of values can be divided into uh, four simple value sets, which is values of power and achievement, stimulation and excitement, universalism and connectedness, safety and security. And uh, and also they are contradicting values. For example, when power and achievement is high, the universal and connectedness becomes low. When stimulation and excitement is high, safety and security becomes low. So this is how this whole structure of this particular theory works. uh, Not just value, but also identifying what are the contradicting values and values that support each other. So this is so I'm just going a little bit deeper into this. So how it works is, it's a questionnaire. It's a survey which is also available online, which anybody can take. So it asks certain questions to the respondent. For example, it gives the statements about a person, and one has to say whether I'm like that person or how much I'm like that person. For example, she likes to take risks. She is always looking for adventure. So if I am like that, I will say I'm a lot like that. I'm not so much like that. So, and it is separate for men and women. That is why it is addressed as he and she. When you take the text, it will address you like that. So other question is, it is important to him to respond to the needs of others. Okay, there's a typo error here. He tries to support those he knows. So, and the response is in this way. For example, if the question is, he tries to see what is good in people and not to hold a grudge. So one has to respond in terms of very much like me, somewhat like me, not at all like me. Or it can be done for someone else also, if you want to see what the opinion of that person is from another person's point of view. And this is the value set and question coming under the heading of benevolence. And the result of the test is shown in this way. The different values of the person are identified in terms of percentage. So how much is achievement score, how much is benevolent score, and the score value which is the maximum, it says, for example, it gives in the form of a statement. Top value that most strongly motivates you is security. So this is one. Uh, this is how the response comes, and the uh, it tells which value. It just is some time to spend with oneself, to look at one's own life, what one is. It's some kind of, it's a that moment for a person when they are taking this test. Or it is, if you are taking this test for other person, so how we judge other people. So it is that kind of a moment for the test taker. So I have also taken this test for the students, just to find out, because knowing a little bit more about them uh, through, it's a little quicker way of knowing about them. So not, it's a unstructured pilot study where just a student of 13 students in the classroom. So interestingly, what was found was that students who scored high in universalism as core value chose projects with greater social relevance, and students with high score on stimulation as core value chose projects that had more aesthetic appeal rather than problem solving. So there, uh, one could find the relation with what the students are actually, how they are choosing and deciding their projects based on what they are identifying them their core value as. So this gave some kind of an encouragement to go, that there is a element of repeatability in this theory, that it can be we can work with different people and similar result, uh, we can get certain results about understanding people. So the next step was, so how to adapt this model for defining learning objectives or and learning outcomes also in context of design curriculum. So it is just an exercise that is continuing to see where it goes. There is, I don't know where it will ultimately go, but still continuing taking leads and clues. So if we analyze the survey, the SWOT survey portrait, and each statement that is written there, there is certain common thing in all the statements, and use of the word important. So she thinks it is important to do a lot of different things. He tries to see what is good in others. So also it is important to him to respond to needs of others. So important word is coming everywhere. It is strange to see that there are 41 questions in this, and uh, almost all statements have the word important. And so the essential thing in the survey is that how they are measuring the value. It is measured by rating the importance a person gives to an action, a thing, a belief, or almost about anything. So so when something is important to someone, they will choose that thing and not some other thing. So this is the central thought behind, trying to see, observe how we can observe it in action, value in action, because ultimately the learning outcomes have to be observable, that only then we can measure them. So the observation component comes from trying to see, uh, yes, what is important for that person. So this is some clue which was there to develop learning outcomes further. um, yes, so all these different values that are finally coming out is different, being giving different importance to different things. For some people, one's whole personal development is important. For some people, helping other people is important. So all these 19 value sets that they have defined, everything is defining what is on the basis of what is more important for that person compared to other things. So so based on this new taxonomy, there is an attempt to develop this new taxonomy. uh, just an attempt. Let's see how it goes. So uh, so the four values that are there in that, it's a different representation of that circular diagram we saw earlier. So one value set is power and achievement, the other's value set is discovery and adventure. Then we have conformity and security, the next value set. Then peace and harmony is the last value set. this diagram, why this diagram has this kind of a visual representation. The the taxonomy of educational objectives are all in the shape of triangles, and triangle really represents one-sided development, excellence, excellence, and more excellence. It is just going towards more and better, acquiring more and more knowledge. But the sign, the wave represents the downward trend, the reverse triangle also, which is more to do with, giving up with the obsession of excellence a little bit, where we come to the point of security and conformity. And here, this is where the value of empathy is practiced, which is opposite to uh, you know excellence in going upward direction. So that is why this graphical representation has been chosen. The importance of going up and going down uh, is there. Now, some examples. So, program objective: appreciate the value of stimulation, exploring the unknown. This is, if this is the program objective. So, course objective. Let us say, for I've taken example of typography as course. Let us say, how do we translate that into the objective? Student will learn the importance of exploring novel typefaces. So this taking from this word importance taken from there. Then the learning outcome: student will acquire the habit of exploring new typefaces in visual design. So this the outcomes are in the form of habits. Now this is something debatable right now. This is, so far I have thought that uh, ultimately the outcome of something being consistently important is development of a habit in a certain way, where uh, it becomes second nature to act in a certain way. It can be debatable, but it's left open to debate. The second one is imbibe the value of security, selection of appropriate visual forms for a given context. If this is the objective, the course objective is translated: student will learn the importance of selecting appropriate typefaces, and the outcome is student will acquire the habit of selecting appropriate typefaces for given type categories. So let me re with another example. So let's say learning objective: student will learn the importance of negative space in a graphic composition. Learning outcome is student will develop the habit of leaving appropriate negative space around visual elements in a graphic composition. So the goal is in the classroom is to see the importance of something, in the importance of doing something, why it is done in a certain way, through comparing with other things. And the evaluation in is similar way. It's a questionnaire. It's not a direct evaluation that one does after the listening to the jury. So one has to we there can be a similar questionnaire developed the way we saw the questionnaire of Schwartz. So it is important for him to create appropriate negative space around visual elements in a graphic composition. So uh, this is the response, whether it how much that person is like that, how who values negative space. This may sound a little very trivial, and because but I want to say a context of in the context of seeing students where certain things are missed out, even when we have discussed in class that negative space is something, and we see that that being forgotten. um, um, so when we are talking about a habit, it is something that is, even when it becomes second nature. So it's something to do with this kind of issue. So the result the final result is in the form of um, you know a statement about the value that a person have, whether the person is driven by benevolence, whether the person is driven by stimulation or driven by security. And different percentage scores, again similar percentage scores about the performance of a it's not really about the performance, but what a person is like. It's something like that, not how well a person did, but what is a person like. It's more like that kind of a uh, uh, now here the thing is, the question may come that uh, we have talked about values, but how do we evaluate knowledge and skill? What about the evaluation of knowledge and skill? Even if we for the time being accept, though that is itself contendable, whether this is how good this is or useful this is, the question will still remain, what about the evaluation of knowledge and skill? So there is a if we for a moment look at these words, so knowledge, value and skill, but in the domain of design, what we are used to hearing, the words that we have grown up listening to are experience, empathy and human centeredness. These are the words that we are using in our classrooms on a daily basis. So, and if we look at this is the same, this is a diagram. If we say experience, the word experience, it contains a complex mixture of knowledge, values and skills. It's all, we cannot separate them. It's difficult to separate these three things the way it is discretely separately at the currently. Or if we look at the word empathy, it is also a complex mixture of knowledge, values and skills and human centeredness itself. And we have seen in our own discussions when we were writing the program objectives in with the design faculty, we have discussed it so many times that in this course, how can we only separate and judge knowledge component in it separate from the value component and from the skill component? So uh, because in design everything is intertwined, connected. And if we look at skill and if we try to translate as craft, in design we have craft is more valuable to us than just a raw skill. And craft is encompassing all the three things. We cannot say that craft is purely a skill based activity. So so in that sense, the affective domain is covering all the three: knowledge, skill and values at the same time. It's not only covering the value component. So yeah, this is affect is combination of all the things coming together. And so the ultimate is a qualitative evaluation, not a quantitative one. And it is a statement about the identity of the student. For example, we look at the student, that things that are important to him and the habits that the student has acquired over the 4 years, and things that are important for her and the habits that she has acquired. So and so this is ultimately is the about identity of who the individual is. So these are some thoughts that are following from the questions that were asked. Yeah, so this is complete presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Sachin. I remember about a year ago when we were changing our, or not changing, adapting our lesson plans to the Bloom's taxonomy, and all of us had to go through this, the starting point of all of this.
Yes, yes, yes.
And we've, yeah, I remember this discussion was so useful to us then, and certainly this revised version has given us so much more to think about. I'd like to open it up for questions, comments from anyone. You can also type in the chat box, but please
Okay,
feel free
can I
to.
jump into it?
Yes, Mark.
And okay, okay, Sachin, thanks for this really gets us thinking about it. Now you did, so, I think there's one phrase in which you said, which really resonates with me as to what this whole design process is and how we can go about it, and that is resolving value conflicts. And I think, in a sense, a lot of what we are doing is, as designers, is that. So I think that is one of the key phrases, I think, which we should consider when we are working out our, what do you call it, learning outcomes, or whatever we may want to call it. I hate these phrases anyway. So, but
I get, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's where I think that I found, I found it very useful that I have a phrase called resolving value conflicts by which to go about it.
Yes, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that was, yeah, that is one of the central things.
Yeah, so that is at least in the architectural field. That is really all we have. That is what we are doing. Really, is resolving conflicts, different values. So for instance, it could be a conflict between a structural value and an aesthetic value.
Yes.
And how does one go about resolving that? And the skill. And the other thing is that how do we deal with a word called imagination? Now, that really,
Yeah. Yes.
how to evaluate it really flummoxes me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is something. Yeah. I've not seen. Yeah. This is another question emerging.
Sorry to bump in, but what about
Yeah.
the word creativity also?
Yes, indeed. That really stumps us, doesn't it?
Yeah. So in the value survey, the words that they have used is again. I don't like those words, but they have called this at. Let's go back to that and this particular diagram here.
No, but why
So
don't we think our way? Why do we have to think the way they think?
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, what
uh,
is one's contribution, you see, in this kind of presentation? Because if you have to simply follow somebody else's thinking, then it is something, which is quite contrary to an imaginative creativity.
so in this one, it is referred to as openness to change. Um,
How do you grade these things? That is my thing. Eventually, we have to put a grade to it, or some sort of numerical evaluation, which I totally hate. I must confess.
Mark, I still like the word spark, which you taught us like 4 years back, and
Uh,
which even till date I use in every studio.
but
The spark.
yeah, so spark would be translated into creativity or imagination or enthusiasm, and
yes. So yeah, these were
participation, like Sachin mentioned also.
uh,
No, but the
these.
spark also has got to do with individual mind.
Yes.
And I think individual mind is so important in the field of creativity because every mind is different. And how can you really, sort of systematize or straitjacket thinking? I mean, the whole purpose of taxonomy, the founder of taxonomy, was to categorize and understand organisms. I mean, it has gone far beyond, you see, by those who have completely lost this initial meaning, you see.
Wow.
And to apply that into these other fields of creative, pursuits is something which I can never understand.
So, sir, even I don't. I'm also not in the line of measurement of these highly subjective things. It is in the context of what we have. We are currently using the Bloom's taxonomy, which is uh, about the cognitive domain into the domains into creative domains. So it is in response to that, and uh, there is this thing about following a lineage, a theory which
I'm
is
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Because I want to understand. You see, I really want to understand because you are in academic,
yes,
you're
sir.
teaching, you have an experience, you have a kind of, education from IDC in Bombay, where one of my friends was for a very long time connected, and he's very different. So I want to understand how do you deal with this kind of approach with the students? I mean, I'm sure students must be flabbergasted. Have you ever taken their opinion about this kind of approach to sort of stigmatize and or sort of categorize thinking? I mean, every
This
mind has its own abilities, to sort of grasp, to synthesize, to analyze. I mean, how can you really standardize these things, into, I mean, Bloom, I think it is a Bloom to my mind, And I really fail to understand how could this be an approach in teaching. Maybe you are interested in this kind of, research and you could pursue it in your own way. But to make this as a kind of academic approach is something, which I can never understand, you see, because, for example, I have never studied this. I have only known this topic by my visits to natural history museums, you see, where you have charts, showing taxonomy. And that is where it makes tremendous sense to me, because otherwise, to really understand the organism and to understand the kingdom, the entire animal kingdom is very difficult. So there, it makes perfect sense. And I always make a point to visit natural history museums, you see, because for nature is a great teacher. So that I can understand. But to make such things, as an approach to design is something, which I can really not understand. I'm sorry, maybe I'm completely out of the context.
Sir, I'm not using these in the classroom. This is a separate research interest, which is not something which is I'm practicing.
Mm.
It's a separate research interest, and it's a proposition that, uh,
But then in that case, can you not relate this? Can you not relate this to your creative work? Can you not really present this as something, which actually aids your thinking? And can you not show us the results, which you come up with, in terms of creative areas? Because ultimately one would really like to understand how one minds work,
yes,
I think why this comes about is that those who evaluate our teaching, insist on us having some kind of a objective way of evaluating, and and a lot of the conflict, or not say conflict, but the dissonance happens over there in that area is that we are expected to teach and evaluate in some kind of a objective manner. And the problem is that we're dealing with a lot of what we're trying to put an objective layer onto what is essentially a subjective issue.
So, can I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Sachin, when you started initially, you were talking about getting something specific, a taxonomy that's specific for the creative fields, right? So that's where your start point was, and it seems that
Yeah.
the kind of the direction that this research has taken in terms of talking about values is as relevant in a non-creative field as it is in a creative field. So
Good point.
how
Good
are you
point.
actually talking about the creative field? Because this is the question. Why isn't the work on the Bloom's cognitive taxonomy by itself and not attaching a value system to it, which is a different domain of, I mean, you're talking about a different the affective domain now, and neither of these two things seem to be talking to each other as far as design is concerned or the creative field is concerned. So that's one discussion, one direction of, I mean, one thought that I had when I was listening to you, and the other is that what you're talking about values are human values, and what Mark was just referring to was values of design. I think you have to maybe separate these two things very clearly. So, for example, when you say that, okay, my value is a I mean, this person is a human centered person, it's about that person. But when you say that I would like to, I mean, does this design cater to a value which is, or how does this design, you're assessing the design and not the person, right? The outcome. That's what the learning outcome is. So you're talking about the outcome, and you say, okay, how does this design respond to human centeredness, because that's my value. So these two things are very different. You are assessing the person versus, I think, the outcome has to be assessed, understood. So two things that you need to maybe consider when you move ahead with this thing.
Yeah, these are all the questions which are there. These questions are there. And there is a lot to think about in this uh, uh, area, and a lot of things I don't know at the moment. It's emerging from the questions that the basic thing is that is about evaluation, and because ultimately we do have to evaluate in the current system. So what are the other options that we have? And these are some of the options that I am proposing, and uh, a lot of questions are there. It's uh, still to see
So
whether
no, but my point is, Sachin, that, sorry to interrupt, but my point is that this is not about design. This is not about creative fields. It still needs to be understood. What would it mean? So what would even the original taxonomy mean for the creative field on its own? Why isn't that being questioned? Why are other layers being added to it without that being understood?
but the original taxonomy is the effective taxonomy also.
No, I don't mean it in chronology ki pehle kya aaya tha. I just mean what is being used. The Bloom's taxonomy, which is being used, which is your start point of this discourse, that itself has, as you have rightly pointed out last time, that it has certain gaps as far as design is concerned, creative thinking is concerned. So I feel that if you don't address that, you will never not be able to add more layers to it.
Can I come in? I don't want to sort of take over, but can I come in, Madam, what you're mentioning on 2 points. One is, as Mark was mentioning values, I think values are total. You see, values in creativity reflects your values as a human being. That is one thing. You see, I think Seven Lamps of Architecture is one of the finest examples of, sort of explaining, characters of, of, of a creative person. The second thing is that creativity is one. Every human act is creative. So I think this is something, which needs to be also understood. And when you say every human act is creative, I think there is a huge value, added to this entire, human being, The only thing, which is not creative in a human being is something which is extremely speedily recognized. And that is, when they start distracting some or destroying something, distraction comes into the case. And we actually immediately put aside this kind of human beings, which have this destructive tendencies. But otherwise, creativity is in every human act. And human values, in a sense, are totally reflected in creative pursuits, That's why, it is said that I think ultimately your work reflects your own inner being, So I just wanted to add these 2 points to your discussion. What you are saying is absolutely true, madam.
So thanks. I do agree with what you're saying. I mean, these two things are definitely absolutely important to consider. But my point was that when you actually talk about the taxonomy, so if you really look at Bloom's taxonomy, it puts at its highest this word called create. So at the bottom is, please correct me if I'm wrong, Sachin, the bottom is understanding. The
No,
bottom is
remembering.
remembering, and that goes to understanding. Then it goes to uh, analyzing, and sequentially reaches creation, creating, and that's where the disconnect is. Because it seems that you can only create once you actually gone through all of these processes of, and you actually don't end up creating how it's used in business or other management related domains. That creative really is something that is a higher degree of expression for them, for in that. But in our domains, in how what we do, we think even remembering is a form of creation. I mean, there is some creativity involved with the process of remembering and understanding. So that's where the disconnect happens with the taxonomy, which could be addressed in terms of the terminologies more than anything else,
Yep.
not the process, not the method. So that's what my point was.
So what about the fact that Bloom himself has brought a different taxonomy for effect?
Can I come in briefly because I have to go to campus? And just because this is very revealing of the entire process, Sachin, that you're still worried about Bloom. I don't think Bloom's worried about us. So what I'm hinting at is that you're kind of churning certain things and you're falling short of churning out of some sort of fear or restriction which is borne by your mind entirely. I feel because uh, what you saying that of course these have to be followed every day in a classroom. Why are you restricted by the given? And also please bear in mind that these systems were developed, encouraged, branded, marketed in monoculture societies where monolingual monoculture societies. So are we encouraging that through education, that you have to be all monoculture and monolingual? I mean, that is something we need to kind of seriously think about, take on board. And also you mentioned the third point is you mentioned scientific repeatability. Is scientific repeatability regardless of a context, or happens only within a context? So although we kind of look for scientific evidences, isn't it true that its efficacy relies so much on a given context? And of course, the scientific processes are bound to fail the moment the context changes. So whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the scientific process or of the context? And more often than not, we blame the context. So these are points for you to just ponder upon, and also there is a difference of value between the value that is assigned within the educational system and within a business or a branding exercise. So do you want to kind of keep that distinction? Is there a difference between a commercial business and a educational setup? Maybe not. Maybe you decide that there isn't. Well, let's have clarity on that so that there is no confusion. You're blurring the boundaries. You're going from one to another system without actually realizing that they may be. So also, Professor Vasara's and Mark's point about creativity and imagination. Yes, I think all human act is creative. But all forms of creation could also be destructive. So that's where the value comes in, I guess. I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. That's why the value comes in, and in cultures where there is a strong belief system, where there are ways of going closer to the truth, then you know that this where the ultimate goal is to be closer to the truth. So what is that truth you're going closer to is guided by those values that are embedded in a culture. So what is that culture you want to inculcate in the students, encourage in the students, where every process of creation, creativity, imagination takes us closer to the truth? And what does that truth look like? These are fundamental questions that are not going to be addressed by Western civilization for us. Totally not, because it's not in their interest. Let's get that straight. They're not going. Why should they address it for us? In fact, they're going to. It's inconvenient for them. All these things. Belief systems are a huge inconvenience to linear thinking. Of course, it is. So why are you kind of falling short of really shaking it up? Why you kind of what is the reason? Because this is the only domain where you can shake things up, till the soil. If you're going to throw a mango seed on top of the soil, it's not going to grow. You have to dig. Depends on the seed, right? So you have to sometimes dig deeper to plant the seed. So why are you falling short of tilling the soil? Is my larger question, which may these questions are something I also struggle with. I think something that many of us struggle with. So I'm not saying that these are instantly answerable, but this is the domain of a postdoctoral research where you should not feel that you're inhibited by a certain set of ideas that are in the mainstream and larger domain. Because I know NAC is guided by this, and it pushes us to have lesson plans. Okay, fair enough. But let's move forward. Let's change the road, as Gandhiji would say. Speed is immaterial if you're on the wrong road. There's no point going on 7th gear if the road is wrong, because it's not going to take you anywhere. So maybe we need to change the road, not the speed, which is a much more difficult task because we don't know our destination. So these are things that are of larger concern, and to get by, really valuable comments by Professor Sabra and Mark, and I think these are really important things to think about. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sachin. I think it's also sparked debate because of our own, everyone has we all have our own relationship to Bloom's taxonomy and our frustrations with it, our grappling with it every semester. But thank you. I mean, it's of course revealed a lot, the discussion, and thanks for your presentation for doing that, for actually, bringing together all these points which we keep thinking about as we work through our lesson plans. And thank you for that. And thank you, Amrita, Mark, Professor Vasavra, and Vibhuti for, pointing out again for all of us the gaps and in the system. And hopefully this has been useful for you, Sachin. And as
Yes,
we
definitely. Yes.
yeah, all to be taken in the spirit for which proposition is, that is the platform to get our research sort of torn down or propped up, and new threads to emerge for the speaker and as well as for us as listeners. So thank you. Are there any other questions? Sorry, Professor Vasavra, would you like to add anything more? Or
No, I mean,
Radha,
this has been
yeah,
yeah,
extremely
Parul.
stimulating.
Sorry, yes. Parul.
And
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
so I just wanted to add that I think this proposition, like you said, Radha, was it was opening up a discourse which is very important for schools like us to get into. And also, I feel that when we talk about Bloom's taxonomy and the cognitive and the affective domains and all of these domains, then I think we need to first understand and internalize these things and actually take up examples, take up our understandings from our teaching to make it more real. When we talk about why we have a problem with, if we have a problem with Bloom's taxonomy, why, what are the instances where we actually find the conflicts in that and applying that to our teaching methodologies in the assessment frameworks, and what is it that we find missing? I think that is the first step that the proposition of course opened up the debate, but I think we need like maybe week long discussions with each other to bring these things out, and it would be great to actually have those very very long detailed kind of workshops where we can cross question and internalize and externalize all of these concerns. So let's
I think that's
I
a
think
great idea.
what has ended up happening is that we, instead of maybe getting into depth into each of the dimensions, we sometimes maybe because we're not, as you said, the frustrations and the struggles that we face, so somewhere or the other maybe we are not uh, able to, why we're not able to develop our own framework probably is because we're not able to grapple with the nitty-gritties and nuances of this framework in detail to a very taking our own examples and our own understandings from our teaching processes and all of that. So maybe I mean I think I would say that great that we had this proposition, and of course it's really what we have to, as teachers, as people, researchers, of course there, but we have to, of course, we, if not us, then who can actually get into this whole discussion and debate and discourse. So I think we should certainly, I think, take this forward and do maybe a week long uh, cross questioning and questioning kind of a workshop. That's all I wanted to add here.
Let's do that, Parul. I think great
Yes.
idea. Why not? Absolutely. Thanks.
Can I add something?
Yes.
No, I just want to put on record my extreme appreciation for this, you see, and my gratefulness to you for inviting me, because I have not seen these kind of faculty dialogues or presentations in any other school. I must tell you that I have been visiting many schools in India, and some of them are quite old. But I have not really seen this kind of activity happening on a regular basis with this kind of participation and seriousness of presentation. So I want to, I want to put on record my, grateful thanks to you for inviting me and making me a part of this. And I wish you continue this, because from the next Friday, I'm going to miss this. So I would urge you to continue doing this as soon as your next semester begins. And I also would request you to make me a part of this. Thank you.
We're greatly encouraged. Thank you so much for that, Professor Masaura. And it's actually, the online platform has really opened up, it's so
Yes.
great that you've been able to be a part of this. And
Yes. No,
for-
I think this is the great advantage, which has happened,
Yes.
because I think everyone throughout, is accessible now. You see, it is extremely easy, and I think we are all doing that, you see, out of our necessity to somehow continue our exchange and interactions with people. And these platforms, which are really adopted, are really a great help, and it adds to value. You see, you never feel stifled or isolated,
Yes.
and in fact, you feel more in conversations with the colleagues and others,
Yes.
than ever before. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be back, let me assure you, definitely. At the start of the new semester. It's taken, I think this academic calendar has undergone a slight shift in terms of dates. So we will wait to hear when our next semester is going to start, which is when we will, approximately around that time, when we are through with our exams and for this semester, we will be back, definitely. And you will, we are very happy to know that you would be there to continue this journey with us. And since it's the
No, but your faculty is really, extremely vibrant, I must say. I've never seen such faculty anywhere, where they're equally participating. And that is a real good strength you have. So I think it would be something, which would be extremely important for you to continue.
they're great colleagues, and the intellectual rigor, which is keeping us all going. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'd just like to end, because since it is the final proposition, I think it would be very remiss of me, for this semester at least, it'd be very remiss if I didn't, just go through a word of thanks for all those who have helped us, encouraged us, and put us, helped us to develop really this platform. So first of all, of course, to our Dean, Vibhuti, who's pushed us and made sure that we've done this with the kind of the rigor that she always envisioned for it, and with the regularity and with the professionalism that it has, that this platform has given us. And of course, I'd like to also thank the deans of SSD, and earlier Jayanti was here, very, very instrumental in getting this online and starting us off, and Professor Sashi Menon, who has been been encouraging. SSPD, School of Planning and Development, there was Prab and Ajit, both who have been part of the team from the beginning. Of course, I'd like to really thank all our colleagues and supporters, who have, who come every 2 weeks, participate, encourage. We take discussions offline, online, and it's, enriches the entire environment that we are a part of. But specifically, I'd like to thank among them Bhavna, Himanshu, Suruchi Modi, Amrita, for sort of being part of, putting this together. And not to, the speakers who week after week, I think it takes a lot to put half-finished or, just in-process ideas out there for all of us to discuss and debate. It has so enriched this platform. And all our speakers from the beginning, Tanaya Verma, Mrunali Balki, Piyush Das, Aruna Bhardwaj, Kanupriya Diol, Tapasya Samal, Parshati Datta, Sobia Ehsan, Sanya Siddiqui, Srijani Hazra, and Sachin Dutt. And of course, to our fabulous proposition team, Sachin and Srijani, who worked tirelessly, and big shout out to you guys, and of course Sobia, who's comrade in arms as we go through this every 2 weeks. So thank you all, and thanks to all of you and Professor Vasavra for coming and encouraging us so much. So
No, it was great learning for me also. Thank you so much. And thank you, Vibhuti, for
January. Have a
thinking of me.
wonderful year.
Thank you.
And a great festive season, and a successful end to this semester, which has been trying in many ways. But thank you all for giving us, and thank you, Vibhuti, for your encouragement as always.
Best wishes. Best wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we can stop recording now.